And now, the survival show which once survived New Coke. In this episode, we sit down with Dan, and we're going to discuss how to be better informed with future danger. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 182. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Future Dan, welcome to In the Rabbit Hole.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for having me.
So now, today we're going to talk about your website, Future Danger. And before we get into that, Dan, who the heck are you? Like, you know, in a nutshell, obviously we all have OPSEC here, but in a nutshell, who are you so that we can give context to what we're about to start talking about?
Absolutely. So I'm the owner and editor of FutureDanger.com. I have worked in the military and in the defense industrial base on the East Coast of the United States for most of my adult life. And I have a perspective on international relations, a little education that goes around behind that, and other news-related items that you'll find on FutureDanger.com. I have some expertise in. So myself and the team that I formed to help run this website are dedicated to looking at news that helps people prepare and stay prepared and make good decisions when the time comes. That's what our current mission is on FutureDanger.com.
Okay. You said there's a team. How, I guess, in a nutshell, how big is this team? I mean, is it, so it's you're not just a one-man band here. There are several people behind this. How does that all work?
Well, we have a handful. I wouldn't say several, but it doesn't take a whole lot to run a news link curation site. What it takes is around-the-clock awareness. So obviously I sleep, and bad things can happen when I am. So we have folks that are not only in the United States, but on our staff that can alert us to major international crises that may happen during the night in the United States. And there's a lot of the team that a lot of members of our team are looking for news and bringing it for recommendation, and we'll take it into consideration. And whether it makes it onto Future Danger or not, we got the help of others looking all the time at any news source that might provide evidence of our indicators. Okay,
so help me out here. What problem are y'all solving? So how is, say, Future Danger different than somebody just going to Drudge Report and scanning through a whole bunch of headlines?
Right. So there's similarities what Drudge has done, and obviously done very successfully for a long time. And the success he's had is definitely an inspiration for our website. But we're doing things a little bit differently, for perhaps an overlapping, but definitely a distinct segment of his audience. And here's the difference. We're a news radar. We're looking for news that fits these preconceived defined indicators. An example of that would be war with Russia starts, right? Could happen.
Sure.
The stock market crashes. It could happen. Or a pandemic is proclaimed. These are things that are major crises that people prepare for. So we think of things differently than just a news link site that puts any link that is of interest to the editor up. We're linking the piece of information, the news, the headline, with an indicator, and we're saying, if this piece of news is true, then the ramification of that is you could potentially have a pandemic, or the stock market could be crashing, or we could be coming close to going to war with a major foe. And how we get away with doing that is we don't try to be black and white. We don't say it is happening. We're saying this piece of news could lead to that. Use your judgment on how close the dangerous condition is, but it allows you to put into perspective news that we think is not found anywhere else.
So now that's pretty interesting. And you also have a system. We were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. You have a system for actually grading those news sources, or at least indicating the severity of what's going on. Tell us a little bit about that. How does you refer to it as your heat mapping? How does that work?
Absolutely. So on the homepage of futuredanger.com, you'll see all these objects, and the objects will have a header. Like I said earlier, that's our indicator. Could be stock market crashes. So Aaron, if the stock market drops 100 points as open on any particular Wednesday, we might find a CNBC news article that says such, right? It dropped 100. We're going to throw an article up, and it's going to be graded green, okay? And that's the lowest level of activation. It's low risk, but it is indicative of stock markets going down. Because if you think about it this way, if the market crashed, it would have to start going down on one particular day some amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's say it's 10:30. The market just opened at 9:30 and it drops 100, but by noon it's down 500 points. Well, now we're going to find a new news article, probably delete the previous one, and grade it at a yellow, moderate risk. Hey, that's a big drop. And let's say by the mid-afternoon they've already hit the trading halts, the circuit breakers, and brought them back on, and this thing's down 1,400 points, and they shut it for the day. Well, we might end the day at orange. Like, that's a high risk.
Mm-hmm.
That's a significant historical event. That market got shut down that day. You start to think about, some of the market shutdowns we've had in the past. And then the next morning it plunges another 1,200 on open, gets halted again, drops another 1,200 and gets halted for the next day. You'll see meetings in the White House. You'll see the Treasury Secretary on TV. It's a crisis. Well, Future Danger will have all that news, and it's going to start going up the color scale, hotter and hotter. And at the top rank, when the proverbial SHFT, it'll be a black indicator with all the news that's showing you this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
But we started off low, so you'll see the greens and the yellows. Anytime you come to futuredanger.com, there probably are a lot of greens and yellows. And what we tell folks is, if you're busy and you have a busy day, check Future Danger. If you see lots of greens and yellows, you don't even have to read. You don't even have to stop and read what those are if you don't have time. Mm-hmm. Everything's good. Generally speaking, everything's good. Put the phone in your pocket, carry on with your life, maybe read them all later at night. But if you bring that phone out of your pocket an hour and a half later, there's oranges and reds smattered across the heat map, it might be a good idea to stop and at least read the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need more information, click on the link and go to the actual news source and get aware. So we're helping people filter the news, and it's all relative to threats. It's all relative to things people prepare for.
Interesting. So when something gets to red, what does that mean for y'all, really?
We would assess that as severe risk
for
that indicator.
Okay.
But the interesting part about the heat map, we think, is we're putting news into context with itself. Earlier you mentioned the Drudge Report, and what you typically find in the 3 columns of the Drudge Report is some things are grouped similarly, like if there's a headline and follow-on items, they might be near each other. But generally, you have to just search around and browse around to get a feel for what Matt Drudge is interested in that day. At Future Danger, if NATO and Russia and the United States, of course, we're part of NATO, but if NATO and Russia are doing things today that are unusual and are precursors to actual conflict breaking out, every single piece of news for that will be inside of the bundle on futuredanger.com. And they're going to come from a lot of different sources. So you're going to see a single picture of that piece of news or that situation with several news sources brought together in one place. We don't think there's a lot of places on the internet doing this.
Yeah, that is interesting. And you do kind of have to hunt around when you go to any of the other websites. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of prioritization. I mean, there's a little bit on Drudge, but things are definitely not kind of grouped together. So that's pretty interesting. And one of the other things that when we were corresponding a little bit about this, you were talking about several indicators adding up to really serious trouble. connect those dots for us. How does that work? And I guess how would your site express that, hey, here are 2, 3, 4 events that are all tied together and are creating real issues and can create a maybe cascading problem of, oh crap, we'll say.
Exactly. So the 4 columns on future danger generally represent the map that we talk about. And column 1 is predominantly news related to liberty and freedom and risks to that. So every clause of the first 10 amendments of our Constitution are separate indicators, for example. And there's more. When 1 or 2 of those starts to strike off at an orange or a red, those indicators usually cool down again. And we have an archive on futuredanger.com where you can see over time how each indicator behaved each day. If a piece of news was graded and entered against that indicator, it's recorded. So you can see the behavior of these things. Some of them light up really at severe levels for a little while, and the news dissipates. Nothing follows along, and they'll go cold again until they heat up again. Others, like, for example, our standoff with Russia for the last 6-8 months, the South China Sea with the Chinese Navy and Air Force and the Korean Peninsula, you get a lot of low-level greens, and they happen a lot. So these indicators behave differently. But on any given moment of your day, when you log on and look at what's going on, you can cross-coordinate. This is happening here, this is happening here, and this is happening here, and not let the overall picture escape you. I'll give you an example of why you might want to do that, Aaron. If people remember the opening ceremony of the 2008 Beijing Olympics,
mm-hmm.
Russia invaded Georgia that week, and the Russians aren't dumb. There's so much that could fill news cycles, and there's so much that most people can pay attention to most of the time. People, and I say people, governments will take advantage of news saturation to do things that would otherwise be the headline. At Future Danger, we're watching for all of it. If it is evident in our indicator, you can come in and be like, well, that's what everybody's talking about, but holy cow, that's also happening. And I hadn't heard about that, and that's also happening. And you can connect dots that can't be connected if your primary source is just to go to Fox News or CNN or whatever they can manage to be telling you next.
Mm-hmm. So it's up to the individual to put the pieces together, so to speak.
Right. We make no judgments on what you're seeing. We just will allow the news to be posted and to exist on the homepage. And we have automatic algorithms that will remove older headlines. So after a certain amount of time, they time out. And if no follow-on evidence emerges, the entire situation or the entire indicator will cool down. But if more information comes and it gets steadily worse, these indicators will stay heated and serve as a resource for someone who's trying to make a decision about where they should place themselves and their family relative to perhaps a city they live in. Is it time to go? Bug in, bug out? Time to make additional purchases? Time to contact other people and make contingency plans or put into effect plans that you already made with perhaps a retreat group? These are the types of we are trying to build a tool that has the ability to help people make better decisions when it comes to taking care of themselves.
Okay. So what prompted y'all to go build this? Because I've been involved with a few software projects and web app projects before. And I mean, this is also something that is ongoing and you'll have to maintain. This is a lot of work. What drives y'all to, why are y'all doing this? I mean, besides the, like, it's a really cool thing and that it's out there, but why for you personally, why do this?
Right. So, personally, I witnessed the 2008, 2007, 2008 market collapse, the banks simultaneously collapsing, the Secretary of the Treasury and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve in the White House, the reports of the Treasury Secretary telling the President, if we don't do anything, there's not going to be an economy on Monday. The presidential candidates coming off of the campaign trail to meet at the White House about this. And I have macroeconomic education. I have an understanding of monetary policy. And I still did not fully grasp what that was all about and how it happened so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the after effects of that on this country, and what I believe to be a sort of a faux economy where the can has been kicked down the road. They never let the shoe drop, but I'm not certain over time it doesn't have to drop, Aaron. So that was a motivating factor, is that this could happen, and it could happen so swiftly, and so many people would be completely unable to understand it, even if they had certain levels of education in how our economy is supposed to be working. They're not going to understand it. So over time, looking at the things people prepare for, it essentially a list started to be made. And that list ended up being the 500 or so indicators of our indicator system. And the philosophy of future danger, the reason why we do what we do, is comes from another part of my background. I am fully aware and have helped build software for organizations in our military that have watch decks, they have watch rooms, they have situation rooms.
Okay.
That have all these tools available for major commands, whatever the government organization's mission is, to have a constant feed of information that they care about, because they have to be prepared. That's their mission. But there's nothing like that available for free to the American public.
Mm-hmm.
Future Danger is an open source version of some of the tools that are available that the government will have. And it's been said by others, and I think it's very interesting. If you talk to the right people in these command centers, they will admit that a large share of the information they're using when they're compiling what they call a single operating picture, a common operating picture of whatever their area that they're responsible for, will be open source intelligence. So Future Danger is bringing in at least a great share of things that the government already has into one place to help the 4 million or so Americans that are actually preparing to take care of themselves in the event of a major crisis. We thought that there was a niche in the market that could be filled by giving those people the same kind of situational awareness tool that our government and our military take advantage of today.
And now for a quick break. Listeners, do you get at least $3 a month worth of value out of ITRH? We'd love to give you more. Visit itrh.net to find out about membership benefits. For starters, members get access to every episode ever produced and a monthly virtual conference. That's just for starters. And it's important to know, In the Rabbit Hole is supported nearly entirely by Roving Horde Armada members just like you. That's how we pay the bills, stay on the air, keep the lights on around here. So go to itrh.net to learn how you can become part of the ITRH Roving Horde Armada. Next up, subscribe to the show through your favorite podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode by going to intherabbithole.com/iTunes or intherabbithole.com/Stitcher or intherabbithole.com/iHeartRadio or intherabbithole.com/Google Play. Or if you are one of those weirdos who listen to the show through YouTube, you can go to intherabbithole.com/YouTube, because you know what? We support weirdos. However weird you want to be, we're all about that. Now, back to the show. You said open source. What do you, I mean, I know what open source means with software, but with a news curation site, what do you mean by open source exactly?
Well, open source intelligence. So anything that's not classified.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes perfect sense. Okay.
Anything you can Google, anything you can find. There is a feature on Future Danger where the inactive indicators towards the bottom are colored blue, and they have no news inside them because there's no evidence of that happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if one of Future Danger's users, and we like to use the word user, not visitor.
Okay.
Instead of visiting a website, we'd like you to be thinking of it as using a web tool. Come to the site and you say, I know that this is happening right now. You can click report and send us information. You can send us a link to a local news story that we might not have found, or you could just report, hey, I'm standing on the corner and there's a riot starting right here, like before the news vans even show up, and tip us off. So it's open source. It's available, and any citizen can publish it without concern about whether, hey, shouldn't have had that email on the server.
Okay. So is this totally altruistic? Are you running a business over there? How does Future Danger support itself?
It's free to anybody that comes and views it, but this is a business. We sell advertising.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
And we strive to attract advertisers who we can provide a loyal relationship with, because if you look at the homepage, the heat map dashboard, we have ads. That's how we pay the bills, but we try to keep them to a minimum so that the entire effect of when you glance at the homepage, you're not spammed by hundreds and hundreds of ads. We only have 5, and we pick the types of advertisers based upon their utility to our users. For example, we're not going to use AdSense. We're not going to have Google just chalk up whatever it thinks our audience wants. We have relationships with prepared food sources, with firearm sellers, with tactical gear type companies, camping supply companies, authors of particular resources for preparedness. So when you come to Future Danger, you get the news, and the advertisers will be there because they've been selected to be a value added if you are inclined to take a step at that moment to increase your preparedness. We want advertisers that are going to be a good source for you.
Okay. That makes sense. Well, very cool. So Dan, let's dig into the site and the news stories a little bit here. I'm looking at the site, and you've got these 4 different columns. So again, remind me again, what are the columns here, and what do they mean when a news article is in one column versus another?
Right, Aaron. So as we discussed earlier, we break down the news as evidence of indicators, but the 4 columns are sort of a meta level above the indicators. They are 4 major categories for them. So indicators that exist in the leftmost column 1, they always stay in that column, and 2 does the same, 3 and 4. So column 1 generally applies to pieces of news that are threatening to liberty, freedom, the social fabric of the country. Column 2 relates to security, international security. We're looking at about 8 to 10 conflict scenarios that we are concerned that the United States may need to become involved in, may get drawn into, and then internal security, things that work our way towards the repression of rights. Column 3 is economics and finance, and all of the scenarios that involve the economy going south in a hurry. And in column 4, you're going to find your natural disasters there, your pandemics, the medical emergencies, the infectious disease reports are going to be in column 4, and a lot of other perceived threats that perhaps not everybody shares, but there are people that do, so we carry it, related to man and technology, society and nature, and how science may be deliberately or inadvertently causing threats to us in the future.
Okay. So I guess for example, right now I'm looking at column 1, and we've got news blatantly censored, and there's all kinds of information here about what's being pulled out and what's not being essentially, I guess, reported on in the media about the election. And then in column 2 here, we have foreign black ops suspected, and it's You've got urgent and trending, and it's all the fun and exciting stuff that is going on with Snowden's involvement, or at least his input on. And then in the next column at the top of one, we've got foreign-owned treasuries dumped. I saw that one today, and that really kind of concerned me. And then the next one over, we've got sun scorches, where we've got NASA says July is the hottest month on record ever, and then we've got unprecedented flood kills and wildfires, and yeah, lots of stuff going on in the world. It makes me anxious just looking at this. So when we look at these things, obviously, like one big thing is to start seeing not only the trees, but also seeing the forest and maybe seeing how these things tie together. When you look at this, how do you personally look at them and start seeing, is it more just intuitive that when you look at it, you start kind of, hey, this thing is impacting this thing or could impact this thing or this, where does that go?
So as the editor of Future Danger, I'm predominantly involved in finding the evidence, finding the pieces of news that are evidence of an indicator. And as we talked about earlier, it could be low-level, low-risk evidence, or it could be direct evidence of that indicator. And that's going to control what that indicator looks like on the heat map dashboard on the homepage. If it's very severe, it's going to be a hotter color. So I would tell you, Aaron, I spend 99% of the time finding it and appropriately curating it, categorizing it, assigning it to an indicator. And every once in a while, I actually have time to step back and look at the homepage like everybody else does, like the people that this is meant to serve. And I start seeing patterns and connections and juxtapositions of pieces of news that are happening simultaneously that are interesting. For example, tonight, Louisiana is under a major disaster. Red Cross came out today and said it's the worst disaster in the United States since Superstorm Sandy. 20,000 people out of their homes, and we have deaths. It's a bad scene in Louisiana. That would show up in column 4 as a natural disaster, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a flood. But in other columns, what we expect to see is the ripple effect. And we saw that tonight when in Baton Rouge, curfews were announced. Remember, Baton Rouge was the scene of police shootings a number of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there's already civil unrest in Baton Rouge. There's now looting. Then it's related to the flood. So you see the spillover effect. The curfews being in place are going to show up in column 2. It's not a natural disaster. It's the policing effort that has to come from that sort of activity, which is borderline riot conditions a few weeks ago. So when you look at Future Danger, you can start to see, well, this is happening here, and this is happening here, and what governments are able to do, intelligence agencies are able to do, organizations with large staffs, high net worth individuals who can hire consultants is they're able to integrate across many threats at the same time to see bigger pictures. Future Danger is designed to be a free service to the American people to come and be able to do that for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so now you had also said there was some interesting things going on with the Snowden stuff, since so no news articles were really touching on it or weren't quoting it. And so you even linked directly to the tweets. Is that?
Right. So this week it came out that there's a group called the Shadow Brokers, a hacking group that has for sale. they did an auction. They're doing an auction. How that turns out, we don't quite know yet. They're auctioning off NSA cyber weapons, like the type of to penetrate. So in our process of Future Danger of trying to find news on this topic, one of our search algorithms discovered Snowden was tweeting about this issue. Because he's a dissident, some would say a traitor, but everybody knows that he is wanted by our government, and he's in exile in Russia. there seems to be a little bit of a taboo to quote him or quote him too carefully, because most of what he can say, Aaron, is straight up TSSCI classified, spilling the beans on the NSA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did it. He did it yesterday in Twitter, and in approximately 15 tweets, he told the world exactly what's going on with this hack, at least from his point of view. And it definitely makes sense. He said this is probably the Russians, that in the past, the NSA has been successfully hacked, but what's different this time, what's truly historic and unprecedented, is a group is coming out saying we did it, and we're going to expose the tools, the actual software, the weapons. And Snowden speculated that this is Russia, and in a world cyber war historic first, they're putting it out there right in front of the United States. Don't mess with us, because that's a major escalation in terms of warfare and how countries relate to each other. So Snowden laid that out in a number of tweets. So we linked directly to him. If no American news source is going to come out and really say exactly what he said, we're agnostic. We want the truth to come out wherever it may come from.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's a pretty in-depth column you've got going on, or pod you've got going on here for it. Probably using the wrong term, but that's pretty impressive. And there's all kinds of, this thing's really lit up today because we've got that, and then we've got, like I said, the treasuries, and then the sun scorch and everything else. What are some of the other interesting things that we're looking at right now in the news that, while I'm looking at your homepage here?
So the stock market is a paradox, but we do, of course, have an indicator that would be very bad news, and probably one of the easiest to understand on Future Danger is the stock market crashes, right? And that would be in column 3, economic.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting terminology that probably a lot of Americans aren't familiar with, but if you're neck deep in the financial world, people are starting to talk about a melt up. You've heard of a meltdown. These stock markets are hitting highs. Last week, for the first time since before the dot-com bubble, since I believe 1999, all 3 American indices hit a record high on the same day.
Mm.
So that people are calling it a melt up. How high it can go, and the effects of the monetary policy from central banks worldwide. People are puzzled. The economy in the United States and globally is in complete uncharted territory. And that's what Lord Rothschild of fame from many angles and many communities believe many things about Lord Rothschild. But he did come out and say that we are in the midst of an unprecedented monetary experiment, the biggest monetary experiment in the history of the world, he said. So something's got to give. Mm-hmm.
So when they say melt up, just out of curiosity, like where are they expecting this to go? Just explode? Or, I mean,
well, the melt up comes before the meltdown.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Man, this is a lot of stuff. How much effort do y'all have to put into this thing, just keeping up with this stuff on a constant basis? I would imagine it's quite a bit.
Well, I do a lion's share, but I'm not the only one. We have a handful of folks that are finding news, and we got a great Twitter followership. A lot of people who are now following Future Danger, get what we're doing. Every time we update a bundle, or a bundle is updated because there's a new piece of evidence, most times we're going to tweet that, and our Twitter account is @FutureDanger6. We got a lot of Twitter followers who will find news and send it to us even before we find it, which is greatly helpful. It only improves the quality. And but otherwise, to answer your question, the idea is to be constantly updated and aware, because fundamentally the purpose is to help people make rational, informed, good decisions with situational awareness. If you come one day, Aaron, and it's a dozen red or black indicators with headlines that you think are from a horror movie because you can't believe they're true, yet you're clicking on them. And yes, these things are true. A financial crisis, a pandemic, major war breaks out, things like that. If you come and you trust what you're seeing on a daily basis, you can make decisions on how should I prepare? What should I do?
Mm-hmm. How often do y'all end up updating this? What's on the front page of the site? Is it as it happens, or?
It's as it's found. I wouldn't be so forward as to say it's as it happens, because there are events that we just slip through the cracks and we're not finding them. And
right.
But generally we're looking at news feeds constantly to try to find relevant pieces. It's a big sorting process because. If I could snap my finger and make every article that had Trump and Clinton disappear, finding some of this would be a lot easier. But
yeah,
there's a lot of things that have to be looked at and deemed, hey, that might be important news, but it's not evidence of a direct threat to people. So we got to do that sorting process, and it's never ending.
Mm.
Everything on the homepage is, generally speaking, within 36 hours. Every headline you see. After that, it's going to archive, and we keep it, and you can see a rolling archive, a historical archive of all headlines that were posted to an indicator. But on the homepage, on the dashboard, everything there is fresh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty impressive. So, Dan, how do people get in touch with you? How do people? Where do you want them to go? Is the best way to hit the website, connect with you on Twitter, do both? Where should we send listeners today to check out all that you've got to offer?
Absolutely. That's the two places, Aaron. It's www.futuredanger.com. Think of it less as a website, more as a web tool that enables you to quickly see what's happening in a color-coded array before you even read a word. Take a look at the temperature of the news, and then dig in if it's hot enough that you think you might need to stop and get involved in understanding what's going on. And on Twitter, it's at FutureDanger6. We interact with folks there. If you got questions, different people man the account at different times, but we can kind of go back and forth. And if anybody has specific pieces of news that they want to report and they're looking at the homepage, there's two ways to tip us, right? And those are greatly appreciated. Again, many hands makes light work. If the piece of news you found out there, you're not seeing it on Future Danger, but you think it ought to be, if it's in one of our indicator bundles that are blue, meaning it's cool, it's inactive, it's safe, there's no news to be found, you find something you think, hey, Future Danger should be posting this, click that bundle. There's a little paper airplane icon. Hit that, and it sorts it already for us, sends us an email, says, send us a link, or send us a report. If you're standing somewhere seeing something that is a situation, if you're standing on a street corner in Milwaukee and something outrageous is happening between the police and protesters, make a report. We'll try to verify it and put it right onto the homepage. If there's an indicator that already has a lot of news and you want to comment on it or add something more, then just send us an email at standingguard@futuredanger.com.
Well, great. Dan, thank you so much for sharing this with us today. And, man, keep up the good hard work.
My pleasure, Aaron. It was I'm honored to be on your show.
Support the show, which helps you stay safe and sound. Become a member of the Roving Horde Armada today by visiting itrh.net. Now, folks, this is how we pay the bills and keep the microphones hot around here. Plus, you get great benefits. Again, visit itrh.net. Links, show notes, and other resources from this episode can be found by visiting intherabbithole.com/E182. And with that, we wrap up episode number 182 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.